All right, I don't want to delay us any further. Thank you for joining us to Grand Rounds for this week. From reactivity to response, a key strategy to keep emotions from derailing your goals. Brought to you by the Pagny Health and Research Foundation. So glad to see many of you are back. If you do like these sessions, make sure to let other people know that they would get something great out of this. I'm going to start with a little housekeeping. So we are recording this session so that you can watch it at any time on our website. We will have some questions and comments and after the presentation, so we really welcome those. So when we have a chance to do that, please share your feedback. Please sign in for the attendance for if you're getting CEs today. I'll be showing that on the next slide with the code. And just one thing I wanted to mention is that you should try to stay on for the whole time, because I understand that they do audit the times that you're on sometimes at the EEDS. So we don't want you to lose any CEs because you've signed out a minute or two early. Also, if you could complete the surveys that we send out every week, it's very, very helpful for us. And you also need to fill out the survey on EEDS to receive your SAMI. Next slide. Okay, this week's program is getting a half a credit, and the activity sign-in code is 82HATE. And I'm very apologetic about that code. It's not something that we create. It's automatically generated from EEDS, and sometimes they have very strange codes. So you can text your attendance to 828-295-1144. I think that is in your chat box right now, so if you want to go ahead and sign in. Dr. Gazelle has no relative financial relationships to report in the last 12 months with a commercial interest, and this activity is not commercially supported. Next slide. So please, if you enjoyed this session and the ones that we've been having, join us again with Dr. Gail for next week. Don't believe everything you think. Simple steps to build mindfulness and stop being imprisoned by your own thoughts, which I'm really looking forward to. Our minds are not always best friends, so let's get some tips from Dr. Gail next week. Next slide. We want to tell you about a special program we're having on Doctor's Day, March 30th. Everybody's welcome to join. We are going to be having a important wellness program focused on sleep. We will be talking a lot about sleep, and it will be a panel discussion with our own PAGNI, Dr. Kim, and with Dr. Gail Gazelle. And really, we hope you come, because you're gonna leave the session with a real sense of renewed sense of optimism, some good tips, and really get some ideas of how to manage in these incredibly stressful times. So we hope you join us. We will put in the sign-in on the chat box, so you can go ahead and sign up for that. Next slide. Before we get into the program today, I wanted to tell you that Gail has given us, again, a generous offer of 2 slots in her upcoming program, which is this Saturday, the 20th, The Power of Self-Compassion. Her programs are always full of really good tips and takeaways and things that are really usable. So if you're interested and you would like to participate, it's a $49 value that she's giving us today, 2 slots. So if you're interested, please make sure to put your name and your email address into the chat box, and we will enroll you in the raffle. I'm gonna stop talking now and let Dr. Gail Gazelle take it away.
Thank you, Tuhina, and thank you to everyone for making the time to attend this session today. It's really a pleasure to be here. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a former hospice physician. I'm in Boston at Harvard Medical School. And about 10 years ago, I pivoted in my career and became an executive coach for physicians and healthcare leaders. And over the last decade, I've really had the pleasure of coaching well over 500 physicians. I'm also a certified mindfulness teacher, and I'm the author of a book that came out in 2020, Everyday Resilience, a practical guide to build inner strength and weather life's challenges. And one of those challenges we're going to focus on today, how to move from reactivity to purposeful response so that you can stop having your emotions in any way derail you from your goals. And so let's think about this for a moment. Many of us are very emotionally reactive, like this woman on the left. And there's so much going on now in healthcare. I mean, times were challenging in healthcare before 2020. You all know that. And obviously, with the changes that have come with the pandemic, the demands can really be perfectly unreal at times. All of the sick patients, all of the uncertainty, all of the efforts that have to be made to keep everybody safe, all the tension around vaccines and around masks. There's so much going on. Not to mention those of you with children who you have to educate on top of all of the other demands of your work. And all of this can leave us very reactive, can't it? It can leave us with a short fuse where we snap, we become irritable, and we say things that we later regret. And so, the reason that I know all of you are here today is because you want to learn some tools to move from what we see on the left here to something more what we see on the right. And what we see on the right is really a sense of mastery, really a sense of really being the agent over one's mind and one's response, rather than kind of being at the whim of what comes up with our emotions. So that's really what we're working on today, because it is possible to move from this reactivity to response. So what I'm going to do is walk through kind of some guidelines, you might say, that I want to teach you about. And then you're going to have a chance to walk through this for yourself so that you can get some practical experience. So you'll be leaving this session with some tools and strategies that you can apply immediately. Now, many of us have somebody that we might call a difficult person in our lives. And what you see here, I don't like to be difficult, but it's the only thing I'm really good at. So, what do I mean by a difficult person? Well, someone that we feel challenged about, someone that gets under our skin, someone where there's tension and where we talk about them with somebody that we're close to and we kind of complain about this difficult person and how difficult they are making our life and work. Now, the difficult person could be a colleague, a coworker, a supervisor, someone that you supervise. It could be someone on the home front. It could be your spouse or partner, your child, a sibling, an adult, an aging parent. It could be a friend. It could be an extended family member. And let's face it, in modern times, it could be somebody that you have a different political view from. Somebody who maybe doesn't believe that COVID is real or that masks are important or that vaccines are effective. So I think it's fair to say that we almost all of us have a difficult person. As you kind of contemplate this right now, I'm sure that you can imagine at least one person that is your difficult person. And I have never met anybody, and I've certainly never coached anybody who doesn't have somebody in that category. Right? So we all have at least one difficult person. Now, I hate to say this, but what does that really mean? Because maybe it means that we're actually the difficult person for somebody else. And it's painful to think about that, but I actually think it's very important because we don't always learn how to get along with people who have differing views, differing philosophies, differing, kind of lens in how they live their life. Now, it's important to understand why we become reactive. And I think it's very helpful to think about what triggers us into reactivity. These are some of the most common triggers for all of us: a sense that we're not being respected, a sense that we're not being listened to or heard, that our needs aren't being seen or appreciated. And very importantly, a belief that we're being treated unfairly and or witnessing somebody else being treated unfairly. So let me actually start by giving a case example here to help bring this into the fore. I'm going to fictionalize a bit, so I'm not breaking confidentiality, but let me just call this person Liz, and somebody that I coached, a nurse that I coached some years ago. And Liz loved her job in the hospital system that she worked in. She really enjoyed her coworkers. She enjoyed the patient mix. She found her work very satisfying until a new coworker arrived in the unit, another nurse. And initially, their relationship was good, but pretty soon she found that this other nurse, this colleague, was kind of saying things to her that she didn't like. She felt that the nurse colleague was putting her down, was judging her, was saying things to her that made the colleague look really smart and good at her job, but left Liz feeling like somehow she was less than. There were comments like the nurse colleague would say, I don't know if you're making the bed for that patient the right way. I mean, trivial things. Or the colleague would say something about how she interacted with a patient or how she interacted with a physician on the phone when she was taking orders. And so this colleague really got under her skin and definitely felt like a very difficult person for her. She found herself ruminating about this colleague, not just during the day at work, but also when she was home with her family and her kids and trying to relax. In fact, there were even times that she woke up during the night thinking about things that this nurse colleague said to her, and they really revved her up. So, if we look at our list of triggers here, she didn't feel respected. She felt that this colleague was putting her down, was trying to make her feel small. And really important for Liz to begin to unpack this and realize kind of what was getting her, what it was, almost like this, that was like poking her. And so, again, you're going to get some practice with this very soon with your difficult person, but I just want to kind of walk through this case vignette to help you understand. So it's very important when we think about reactivity with a particular person to think about what is the goal? Is the goal to get along? Is the goal to exit the relationship if you have that ability, if it's not, let's say, a close coworker? Is the goal peace of mind? As I said, Liz found herself ruminating about her difficult person. And that really was not her goal. Her goal was to be more present with her family. Her goal was to begin really improving her self care. And her self care was eroded because this was actually even disrupting her sleep. So we
Gail,
really, yes.
may I interrupt? There is some background noise, so it's probably coming from your earphones. So if you might take them off. Yes, thank you.
Oh, thank you for letting me know. Is that a bit better? Because I don't think I can do too much other than that.
Yes, that's great.
So, okay, thank you so much.
Yes.
So again, we really want to think with this difficult party, what is the goal? Very important to understand that. Now, another frame that's very useful is to think about what can we control here? So there are things that are under our control, and there are sadly many things that are out of our control. And if you look at this graphic, you can really see that the sphere of what we can influence is actually very small compared to the sphere of things that we can't, right? Just think about COVID, for example, and how much is out of our control. So when we're thinking about the difficult person, well, what is under our control and what isn't? Can we control how another human being acts and relates to us? Can we control what another human being says? I think you can see very clearly that we're lucky if we can control ourselves, right? And really control how we interact and how we react to circumstances that we face. So, really important as Liz was kind of looking at this situation, she was really stuck on this person needs to change. She can't treat me like this. This is unfair. She doesn't respect me. She was very caught up in that. In fact, kind of at times having loud arguments inside her own head about how this nurse colleague needed to change. And I think you can see the fallacy of that. A lot of energy can be expended
thinking about how somebody needs to change. And are they going to change? Who knows? The only one we have a hope of controlling is us. Also, very important to think about how the situation might look through this other person's lens, this difficult person. Whatever you know about them, whatever you know about their life journey, difficulties that they've faced in their family, in their workplace, from a socioeconomic basis, from racial discrimination, whatever it is, it can be very helpful to think about, well, what's going on for this person that they're acting the way that they're acting. And in fact, when I asked Liz to look through this nursing colleague's lens, it was very interesting what she said. She said, well, she is new. And I wonder if she thinks she has to prove herself. Maybe she feels insecure. She actually thought a little bit more about what she knew about this challenging colleague. And there were a bunch of things that came to light. It turned out that this colleague was taking care of a mom with advanced Alzheimer's. And in addition to the stresses of their very busy job on the wards, this colleague was going home to, a very difficult home situation. So that helped maybe loosen a little bit of some of the reactivity. Very important as well to think about what you're taking personally. In this example of Liz, she was taking it very personally. She was taking the comments that this colleague made as really putting her down, as being about her. And an important question to ask is, well, what if this wasn't personal to me? What if this was 100% about this difficult person and their life view? And that can also loosen the hold of some of the reactivity. Now, the last thing that I want to say about this is if you think about your difficult person, you might want to ask yourself, well, in what ways am I taking the bait? Like this fish with the hook. Is there something that this other person is doing that really gets my goat, right? That really gets under my skin? And we can think about that as bait. And again, in this example for Liz, the bait was somebody telling her that she wasn't doing her job right. Again, kind of like that trigger, that sense of not being respected. Okay, so I told you that you would get practical experience. So let's do that right now. I'd like you to bring to mind somebody that you find difficult. If you don't have anybody, that's great. You don't have to fabricate this. But I want you to pick one person, and don't pick a 10 out of 10 difficult. Pick maybe in the 3 to 5 range, if you would, to give this exercise a spin. But bring them to mind and think about the difficulty and what it is that really gets to you in your interaction with this person. So let's walk through this, what we might call a reactivity checklist. And let's start with that question. What is your goal? What is your goal in this relationship? Is your goal to get along? Is your goal, as I said, to exit this relationship, to either leave a job or, not associate with a friend? Is your goal calm? Is your goal happiness and contentment? I want you to really think about that for a moment because I think it will help you as you develop this toolkit for managing your emotional reactivity. Let's now go to this question of, well, what about this situation and my interactions with this person are under my control? And what isn't under my control? So you know the nature of this difficulty. You know who this person is. What parts of this are under your control? Perhaps if it's a young child who's your difficult person, maybe you do have some control there. Maybe you can set limits. Maybe there's too much screen time that a child is getting during the pandemic. Maybe you have some control there. But I want you to really be realistic. What parts of this can you exercise control over? And very importantly, what parts of it are you dissipating your precious energy in trying to change something that you can't change? And perhaps as you consider this question, you might even be aware, gosh, I've been expending a lot of energy in my mind telling myself and kind of arguing in my mind that this person has to do things differently. And you know what? It hasn't worked. I can't control what they do. And if you have thoughts as we're doing this exercise, please feel free to put those in the chat. I think it'll be educational for everybody in this session to have some sharing here. Let's go to the third point. When I look through their lens, what is it that I see? Whatever you know about this person, their life trajectory, whatever difficulties they've faced, whatever it is, the path that they've walked, putting yourself in their shoes for a moment and really thinking, well, how does this difficulty look to them? Are they happy about it? Are they getting something out of it? Is the wear and tear difficult for them as well? Is it even possible that there's something that I'm doing that is fueling this difficulty, that's escalating this conflict? And again, it can be painful to ask these questions, and yet it really has to do with what is your goal? If your goal is to get along and to be less reactive, these questions are vitally important. Let's go to the next question. If this is all due to them and their lens and their way of operating in the world and whatever I might represent to them, what I might trigger for them, how does this shift for me if I really think about that this is all them and that I'm kind of almost like an innocent bystander in their life? What shifts for me when I don't take it personally? And again, just to go back to that example of Liz, she was also struggling with her teenagers. And let's face it, teenagers can be very reactive, right? That's kind of what they go through in their developmental process. And, her teenage daughter would say things to her like, Mom, why didn't you do whatever? Why didn't you buy me, that new dress or take me to the mall or get me, that new device? And sometimes it would escalate, and her teenage daughter would say things to her like, you're the worst mom in the neighborhood. All my friends' moms do, da 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 da. This is what teenagers do. And you know what? Liz was taking it very personally. And once she shifted and realized that her teenage daughter was just being a teenager, normal actually for teenagers, developmentally appropriate, she was actually much more able to work with her teenager and move from reactivity to response. And then lastly, that question of in what ways might you be taking the bait? So I just want to briefly say that what we're doing here, in fact, is utilizing mindfulness. When we're reactive, we move from stimulus to response like that. You can see in this image that we're almost like a marionette. We're kind of being moved around and jerked around and feeling like things are out of control. We don't know why we're so reactive. We don't know how to change it. With mindfulness, we're putting some space in between the stimulus and response. And that's what we're doing with this reactivity checklist. We're simply bringing into awareness some other parts of the scene that we may not be aware of. That's what those questions are about. And once we do that, I think as you can see in this exercise, we realize that we have a choice. We can be reactive, always an option, or we can use the data that we have collected with those questions to actually do something that is more productive, more resourceful, more purposeful, more likely to get us toward our goals. And when you think about how you feel at the end of the day, that first slide that I showed of the woman pulling her hair out, or the empowered woman, when we take these steps, we can move from that sense of just everything being out of control and wanting to pull our hair out and actually moving to a sense of mastery. Let's do another exercise as you think about this individual. You've asked these questions, but maybe you're in a real-time situation with them and kind of the flames are being fanned in your interaction with this difficult person. Let's just try something as you imagine an interaction like that. I want you to just kind of pause here, freeze the frame, so to speak, and take 3 slow, deep breaths. After taking the 3 slow, deep breaths, I want you to imagine that you've stepped out of yourself and you're almost looking at yourself in this situation as an observer. And you're doing so with tremendous compassion for you and your difficulty here with this individual. Well, imagine that you've stepped out of yourself and you're looking with deep, like Mother Teresa level compassion at what it's like for you to be in this circumstance. I wonder what this compassionate observer would see and what they might say to you. So take a moment to imagine that. And now that you've tried on this lens, I would like you to praise yourself in any way, small or large, for how you're doing with this challenging person. You might say something to yourself like, gosh, I'm doing the best I can. Or you might say, what I'm going through is difficult. I do deserve compassion. And after you've praised yourself, then think about what the next steps are and proceed with them. I'd really invite you to share in the chat what your experience is with this exercise, this STOP protocol. It's going to take practice. All of these steps will not happen overnight. And yet, I really hope that you feel a sense of agency, a greater sense of command, a greater sense of hopefulness, that you have some tools in your toolbox to help you move from reactivity to response. This session is being recorded. You can come back to it through the PAGNI platform, and you'll get information about how to do that. I want to encourage you to do that. We feel so much better about ourselves when we're not being reactive, and that's really what I wish for all of you. We have about 3 minutes for questions. So I don't know, Xiomara, if there are any questions in the chat or if you'd like to unmute yourself. And I wanted to say as well regarding the raffle that Tuhina mentioned, this is a 2-hour workshop this Saturday from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern. It's like this session, it's very experiential. The title is The Power of Self-Compassion. So Xiomara, are there some questions?
We don't have any questions, but we do have 2 wonderful comments. We have one from Caroline Stoneman, very helpful and second. Thank you. And then we also have from Tahina, I feel more in control of myself.
Wonderful. Wonderful. So if anyone else had any response to this, anything that you really see as a takeaway, we'd love to hear from you. Tahina, did you have any closing words?
No, I really appreciate what you said today. It's just very applicable to everybody. Everybody has some kind of difficult situation in their life, and it's so nice to be able to think about this, you know, just really sit and ponder. And you know, I feel like I really learned a lot. So thank you for this session.
Wonderful.
Anybody else? Anybody else want to comment how they might use this in the future? Please feel free to use the chat box or unmute yourself.
Yeah, I think we're coming to the end, and perhaps this is a lot to take in. So just let it percolate. Think about this perhaps as you encounter your difficult person today or as you go through your week, and try some of these steps out. I really hope they can be helpful to you. Tuhina, I think we're in the last minute. Anything you wanted to say in closing?
We have one more comment from Elizabeth Teeley, and it says, we'll definitely use the checklist. Smiley face.
Wonderful.
So thank you for that, Ms. Teeley.
And then we have a raffle winner, right, Xiomara?
Yes, we have one raffle winner that won the spot, and that is Shelly Weldman. So congratulations, Shelly. We will be sending you the information for the program shortly today for you to join us on Saturday with Dr. Gail Gazelle. So thank you so much.
And thank you, everyone, for making the time to be here today. We'll be continuing these well into April and May, and we really hope that these sessions can be helpful and nourishing for you as you face all the difficulties that are involved in your life and work. So thank you so much for being here.
Don't forget to sign in if you're looking for CE today. with the code 82HATE. You have till tomorrow at noon to sign in to get your continuing education credits. Thank you, everybody. Have a great afternoon.